So as you may have picked up from the video and from the graphic in front of you, we are going to dive back into Exodus. And I say dive back into Exodus. Some of you were not even around when 2 years ago I covered the first 15 chapters of Exodus, and I said I'm going to get back to the rest of it at some point. And so we've already covered the first 15 chapters 2 years ago. You can go back and check that out. And I'll just warn you, that was the fun part, and now we're going to do the rest. So, you may be rethinking your decision to be here, but I got to tell you, I'm excited about the rest of it. There's a reason that everybody preaches the first 15 chapters. That's easy, right? Like that's the Red Sea and the plagues and the burning bush. Like that's the fun stuff. That's easy. We're going to tackle the rest of it because I think that God has something really profound to tell us through the rest of the book. I think if that wasn't true, he wouldn't have bothered to have made sure that it was written down and given to us. And I think some of what makes it so significant is that it's not the fun stuff. That it's after the victory, it's after the celebration, it's after the party, it's after the triumph, it's the rest of it, it's the wilderness. And I think that's what life often is. Have you ever had a moment where you just sort of hit a pinnacle, right? You're top of the mountain moment, like you're just on cloud nine, like things can't get much better than this. And then the very next moment, it feels like life just hits you. And in fact, maybe hit is the wrong word. Maybe it's more like a wet blanket that just lands on you and begins to smother you. You can barely move, you can barely breathe. It's just reality. It just sort of sets in. Carrie and I, we just got back from our 20th wedding anniversary trip. It was pretty great, I gotta tell you. We decided we've never done this before. We went to the Caribbean, which we just wanted to do something really special. It was our 20th wedding anniversary. It was also Carrie's birthday. So 20 years of marriage, and she turned 25. And there's a weird time-space continuum thing that happens that I can't explain. It's wild. And then as some of you know, like I finished my doctorate in the fall, and so we just said, we've never done this before. We're gonna do something really crazy, really special. And so we went to the Caribbean, and it was as good as advertised. I'd never been there, but just gorgeous, just paradise. I mean, just amazing. Not to make you feel jealous, but it was warm. Like really warm, It was like in the low 80s, and there was a breeze, and the sky is just this deep blue, and the water is a deep blue-green, and it's just amazing. And did I mention it was warm and sunny? And we just soaked it up, for those several days, and then we had to come back to reality, to New Jersey in winter. And we thought, should we have gone to begin with? I mean, it's almost harder to come back, It's almost harder to reacclimate. Like if we had just stayed, we could have just sort of like moped our way through. But instead, we went and enjoyed this amazing experience. And did I mention it was warm and sunny? And then we came back, and it's like, man, reality is this wet blanket. It's like we're back to the schedules, and we've got the kids who we adore, and we've got work, and we've got all the things. Just no one's doing our dishes, no one's making our meals. Like we had to do real life. It's rough. It's hard. It's the wilderness, right? And see, life is full of those types of moments, right? Where you hit some sort of a plateau, some sort of amazing moment. You think, man, this is so great. I just can't get over how great this is. Does it get any better than this? And then reality hits. Like you meet that special someone, and it's so great, and you fall in love, and maybe you get married, you go on the honeymoon, and does it get any better than this? And then you have to learn to live together and make decisions and pay bills and how to fight and how to communicate and all the rest of it. And so there's the honeymoon. It's like, man, this is the pinnacle. It's just so great. And then there's the marriage, which is the wilderness. Does that sound too negative? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But there's peaks along the way, and even in the wilderness, right? Little plateaus like, oh, what if you have a baby? I mean, there's a peak you have a baby, it's so great, you're holding this precious child. It's amazing, it's a miracle. Of course, then they make you take it home with you. And there's diapers and feedings, and then they grow up to be teenagers, right? Or maybe it's a job and you get a promotion, and it's like, man, this is great. Or you get the job you've been waiting for, and it's better perks, better pay, better office, but then there's the reality, the very next moment, you have more responsibility, you have more people to deal with, bigger problems, bigger challenges, longer hours, like whatever comes with it in that very next moment, right? You can hit the pinnacle. You can win the Super Bowl, right? I heard something happen like a couple weeks ago. I left town immediately. Like I was like in another country, right? But I heard the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but I was talking to somebody and they said they were at, a watch party. They were watching with their friends and there's the celebration as the Eagles win. And then afterwards they turned to each other and were like, now what? Monday happened, right? Sunday, celebration. Monday, back to work, back to the grind. And see, the portion of Exodus that we're going to be looking over these never several weeks, it begins in this type of moment, after the victory celebration, after the pinnacle. In the first 15 chapters, remember, this is the fun stuff. So let me just catch you up real quick. In the first 15 chapters, this is where we meet Moses. God saves Moses from Pharaoh, and then Moses, he makes some bad decisions in life, and he goes off and he gets in the wilderness for a long time, and then there's the burning bush, and God appears to him in this flame, and he says, Moses, I'm going to raise you up to be this great leader, and you're going to lead my people out. And then what God proceeds to do is to pick a fight with Pharaoh, which is not a fair fight, by the way. But see, Pharaoh, he is the self-proclaimed God of Egypt. Like he considers himself and calls himself a deity along with all the other lesser gods. And so God, he is picking a fight with Pharaoh because Pharaoh, not only does he consider himself a god, he's enslaving God's people. And God says, I've had enough of that. So he sends Moses to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Pharaoh says no. And then over the course of 10 plagues, God begins to pulverize Pharaoh into submission. Like just over and over, like their economy, their cattle, their water, their people, like everybody. He's just pulverizing until finally Pharaoh relents, says, okay, you can have your people. Moses leads them out. And then Pharaoh has another change of heart, gathers his army, chases after them. And you know the story. He corners them at the Red Sea. God splits the Red Sea. The Israelites walk through on dry land. Pharaoh and his army try to cross, and God brings the waters of the Red Sea crashing down upon them and wipes out all of Israel's enemy. And at that moment in chapter 15 is where you get the party. It's the celebration. And if you go back to chapter 15, this is where they are singing and they are dancing. I mean, you can just imagine it. They're standing on the shore of the Red Sea. They just saw Pharaoh's army get wiped out, and they are singing and they are dancing. Their minds are blown. They are in awe. I cannot believe that God has rescued us in such a dramatic fashion. I can't believe this is possible. And now we're ready for the promised land. And they turn around, and it's the wilderness. It's the desert. In chapter 15, verse 22, it says, then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, literally where they had been standing on the banks, celebrating and dancing, and they turned around and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days, they traveled in the desert without finding water. Talk about a downer. Like you thought you were getting the promised land. Surprise! It's a desert. It's a wilderness. You saw God do miracles, but now turn around. Look what's in front of you. And God says, hey, let's take a walk. And they're like, okay, let's start walking. Like, how long is this going to take? A bit. Just a little while. Hang with me. And see, God's not making it easy. Like, there's no B&Bs along the way. There's no Hilton Rewards Club. There's no Hyatts. Like, they're just walking in the wilderness, in the desert, for 3 days without water. That's intense. So in survival, there's what's called the rule of threes. So you can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter from inclement weather, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Right? So 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Guess how long they've been walking without water? 3 days. God isn't making this easy on them. Like they're wandering for 3 days without water. Like this is pushing the limits of human survival. They need water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. So good news, found water. Bad news, can't drink it. Undrinkable. This is why the place is called Marah, meaning bitter. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what are we to drink? That seems like a legit question. Valid question. What are we to drink? Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. And he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. Now, this is not my area of expertise, but evidently there are woods that have sweetening properties. Okay, so there's woods that exist. They have chemical properties that if you put it in water, it will sweeten the water. Maybe this is what they make stevia from. I have no idea, like all natural, okay? And so it's possible that there was this piece of wood over here that God knew had those qualities, those properties, those chemical components that if they put it in the water, it would sweeten the water. Or maybe this is just a bona fide miracle and it could have been any stick. God just wanted him for whatever reason to pick up that stick, could have been any stick, and God is going to sweeten the water. What matters, though, is that God is still the one who provides the solution. Either way, it doesn't matter. See, either it's a random stick and God's going to perform a miracle and it's like it's just going to sweeten it, or the stick has chemical properties. Well, guess who gave it the chemical properties? See, part of the reason that we struggle sometimes to see God working in our lives is because we keep looking for big dramatic miracles, but oftentimes God, man, he uses whatever is available. He uses whatever is right around us to provide solutions. And then we take it for granted and go, well, I don't really know why that happened. It's just a coincidence. It was just this random opportunity. Well, who do you think created those? See, you have to learn to begin to see beyond the coincidence and to see God. We have to learn to see God with eyes that peel back what seems coincidence, what seems like an opportunity, because there are solutions all around that God provides because he is setting us up along the way. Like he knows what we need. We will see solutions that sometimes the solution is already in you. You have an ability that God has given you to solve that problem. But he's the one who gave it to you. Sometimes it's that coincidence. But see, just because it's not a capital M miracle doesn't make it an accident. We have to look through the coincidence and learn to see God. He goes on. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. And he said, if you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. And then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water. So he gives them an oasis, right? He gives them a break. He says, hey, you followed me through here. I'm going to take you over this place. Now you can chill. But right before this is an interesting moment because God is sort of calling them out. Right? He says, hey, be careful. You guys started grumbling a little bit before, and I just want to make sure that you understand what's going on here, that I'm going to be leading you, so you need to listen and you need to obey. It almost seems a little unfair because, their complaint was that they didn't have water. That seems reasonable. That seems like a legit complaint. Like, God, we just need some water. But they grumbled, but it's almost like God knows what's coming. He kind of knows what's going on inside of them. And he realizes that this grumbling, man, it's just going to grow. See, this becomes the pattern for the Israelites throughout the wilderness. We grumble, they grumble, they grumble. God provides. They move on. And then something goes wrong and they start over. And they grumble and they grumble and they grumble. God provides. They move on and they start over. So God, he sees this and it's like he's almost nipping it in the bud, if you will. It's like he's way out ahead of this thing. This is the first time. And he says, hey, hold up. Be careful. Pay attention. Listen to what I have, because this is just the beginning of a very long journey through the wilderness. In fact, the very next chapter, they're moving on, right? Verse 1 of chapter 16, the whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. And in the desert, the whole community grumbled, here we go again, against Moses and Aaron. And the Israelites said to them, I love this, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, never mind the fact that we were oppressed and enslaved. And they murdered our children. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Now remember the rule of threes. So 3 minutes for air, 3 hours for shelter, 3 days for water, and 3 weeks for food. Well, at this point, they've been outside of Egypt. They've been on the move for about 6 weeks. So they probably started with some food, but now they're out. They have no more food. They have run out. They are starving, and they are getting hangry, right? Not hungry. Like hungry, that's just the beginning. No, this is anger attached to hungry. This is hangry. They're not happy about this. Like if, you know hangry, right? Like if you've ever been pregnant or lived with someone who's pregnant, you understand hangry, right? That's when she looks at you at 11 o'clock at night and says, I need a cheeseburger, and you hesitate. And in her eyes, like you see hangry, that's hangry, right? Your life is flashing before her eyes, right? You may not meet your child, okay? So this is hangry. They're hangry, they're upset, they're angry, they're whining. Oh, are they whining? Right? I mean, talk about drama. If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. Man, we had so good back there, so much food. It was amazing. It was a tropical paradise. Like, we just loved it so much, but you brought us out here to die. This is how my kids sound if they go longer than 15 minutes without a snack. You know, they get that from me, by the way. When Carrie and I first got together, she carried around snacks for me so that I wouldn't get hangry. Now that we have children, I carry my own snacks. I'm growing up, I'm adulting now, I carry my own snacks, take responsibility for myself. Verse 4, then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening, you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning, you will see the glory of the Lord because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? Moses and Aaron, who are we that you should grumble against us? And Moses also said, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning because he's heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. And get this, while Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. You see, if there was any question about who's actually in charge, who's actually leading this whole assembly, it's God. You see the cloud, there is his glory. No mistaking, no confusion. Here's the glory of the Lord over you. The Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening quail came and covered the camp. And in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. And when the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. And when the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. So you have to feel for Moses at some level. Right? At one level, like he didn't ask for any of this. He was minding his own business in the wilderness, tending some flocks, and then God has to get a hold of him, and he says, okay, you're going to lead my people out of Egypt. And Moses is like, okay, here we go. And so now he's leading this huge assembly of people who, by the way, are ex-slaves, which means they are absolutely fractured. Emotionally, psychologically, these are not healthy people. They've lived for hundreds of years under oppression. And so he's leading them not on this cakewalk, but through the wilderness, trying to keep all of them together, trying to keep order. Like this is this is a thankless job. And not only that, but he's honestly not even really in charge. Like he's just middle management. Like would Moses have chosen any of this? Like, would he choose to take them into the wilderness? Like, would he have created all of this? No. This is God who is leading them. Moses I'm just doing what God says, but he's the complaint department. He gets all the grumbling. He gets every time something goes wrong, everybody comes to him and he has to deal with it. And again, just to be clear, just like with the water, when they're looking for food, like these are legit complaints. Like it matters whether you have water, whether you have food. But there's a difference. There's a difference between grumbling and voicing a complaint. There's a difference. There's a difference between grumbling and complaining. See, grumbling, you would recognize grumbling. It's when that person, it's like their countenance is just down and they're just crabby and grumpy and they're just whining and fussing about everything. and they are grumbling, and they make it personal, right? It's, Moses, look what you did. You led us into the wilderness. You did this. See, that's grumbling. And see, people who grumble, like there's no pleasing them. This is a way of life for them, right? Grumblers, even if you fix whatever they're grumbling about, they're not going to thank you for that. They're just going to look for something else to grumble about. They're not pleased that you fixed that, like you should have done that to begin with. They're just going to find something else that they can complain in this way, this fashion too, because it's not about their circumstances, it's about their character. See, grumbly people, they're ungrateful people. They have a spirit of ingratitude. And so it's not about their circumstances. It's not about really the food and the water. There's going to be something no matter what. They're grumbling because that's who they are. When Carrie and I were on our trip in the Caribbean, did I mention it was warm? It's so beautiful. And so we got there and we're just like, oh my gosh, we're basking in this. It's amazing. And we stay up really late and we're just, hanging out, and they've got some like entertainment and stuff. And we go back and we're wiped out. We've had this long day of travel, and then we're just soaking up the sun, and that wears you out. It was so hard. And then, and so we go to bed and just sleep like logs. It's just awesome, Wake up the next day, we're like, let's do it again. Let's go find the sun and sit out and just, bask in all of it. And then that night we go back and we go to bed, and in the middle of the night I wake up, and I'm sort of trying to it's like in the middle of the night, like 2:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, what is this, And it just feels like something is like tapping me on the leg. Like just right on my knee. It's just gentle, just tapping. And I kind of waking up, trying to process what's happening, where am I, what's going on. And then I realized that our roof is leaking. And then I realized that there's tapping behind my head too. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to go back to sleep. And so I'm pretty chill, and so I was like, I'll just rearrange my body, kind of away from it, and go back to sleep. Slept great. Carrie seemed good. And so get up the next day, and I go to the concierge person, and I was like, hey, by the way, there's leaking from our roof. And she's like, I'm so sorry, do you want to switch rooms? And Carrie and I talked, and we're like, no, we love our room. We got a great view. We don't want to move. It would be such a pain to pack up and move. She said, well, no problem. We'll get it fixed, right? So it's a thatch roof, and so they just kind of push everything aside, and there's, I don't know what underneath it, plywood, I hope, something, I don't know. And some rain flashing would be good. And so supposedly they fix it, and they put the thatch roof back. And so we go to bed that night, and it turns out, I didn't know this, that evidently this time of year, it rains literally every night. So you can tell where this is going. And so that night, sure enough, I hear a rainstorm come through, and I wake up to tap, 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 and tap, 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 and then Carrie jerks awake because now it's tapping on her head. And then we realize it's kind of tapping a couple of other places and kind of on the floor on either side too. And so we can't really move the bed anywhere. And so, we're resourceful people and we don't, overreact. So we're like, well, we'll just kind of maneuver around. And I hang some towels up to kind of catch the water as best we can. And, it's cool. So we go back to sleep. But the next day I go back to the concierge. I was like, yeah, they tried to fix it. It didn't really fix it. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Sure you didn't want to change rooms? No, we're good. and at this point, she thinks we're crazy. And I'm just smiling. I'm like, yeah, if they could fix it, that'd be great. So she's going to go fix it, or they're going to fix it. And again, that night, more drips, and the next day I'm like, yeah, still dripping on us. And do you want to change rooms? No, we're good. And we're just chill like that. And then the air conditioning breaks. But what we discovered is that it was 75 at night. And if you open the doors and turn on the fan, we were like, we should have been doing this all along. It was great. It was so refreshing. And so we get to the last day. Nothing has ever finally been fixed. And so she comes to us, and I can just tell by the look on her face, she's like, I can't believe you're still smiling at me. This was your vacation, and you got dripped on all week long, and your AC broke. Our TV didn't work either, not that I cared. But I was like, I just imagine that there's probably people, I'm sure, who would be so outraged, who would be letting her have it. And she's looking at us like, are you sure you're not mad? And we're like, no, it's good. We had a great time. This is wonderful. What a great experience. But understand, I did complain. Like, it wasn't that I never told her that the roof was leaking. I totally told her every day. Like, it's still leaking. I made my complaints known. I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't thrilled. We let her know it's not good, both for the fact that we didn't really want to experience it, but honestly, we were like, you really need to get that fixed because the next people may not be as nice as we are. Like, you should really deal with this, But I just imagine that there are people who, and I get it, like who would be like, this is our vacation, we've paid for it, and let me talk to your boss, let me talk to your boss. And they're outraged, and they're bullying, and they're leaving bad Yelp reviews. But that's just not how Carrie and I roll. Like, we don't want to be those people. We want to complain, absolutely. But we're not going to grumble, right? We're not going to beat somebody up over something. Like we don't want to ruin our reputation. And frankly, I know what it's like to be grumbled about. Not by anybody here, of course. But I know what it's like when people grumble behind your back. And it's personal. And we just don't want to be those people. And it's so interesting that in the scriptures, what you find is that God, he is very opposed to grumbling, but he's okay with complaints. You see it time and time again. Every time you read where somebody cries out to God, and they cried out to God, like that is people complaining, and God receives that. That's people saying, God, I don't like what's going on. I don't like my life. I don't like what's going on. And God, you could do something about it. I really wish you would, and God receives that. And read the Psalms. David, over and over again, he complains to God, often about God. God, you're not doing what I wish you would do. You're letting the bad guys win. The enemies are prevailing. Evil is winning out. God, why don't you do something? And God receives that because David is still honoring God. David isn't grumbling about God. He's not going around going, man, God hates me, and God must not love us, and I just wish God would get his act together. No, he is taking his complaints straight to the source. He's talking to God, saying, God, I know what you're capable. I know you're loving. I know you're good. I wish you would do something about this, but I'm just going to keep bringing this complaint to you. And God says, I'm cool with that. See, it's like if you have a relationship with someone and you have to always sugarcoat everything that you say, you can never be really honest with them. If you have to bubble wrap them because they are so emotionally fragile and insecure that if you are honest, they receive that badly, like that's not a healthy relationship because that person isn't a healthy person. Like a real relationship, a healthy relationship is one that is built on honesty, right? Being able to mutually tell each other what you need to hear because you care about each other. Right? There's mutual love and respect, but also honesty. And so you can tell each other hard things, not because you're trying to punish the other person or hurt the other person, but because you care about the relationship and you want to protect it and preserve it at all costs. See, I know this is hard to believe, but sometimes, just at least hypothetically, Carrie might complain about me, to me, about something I've done, something that's happening in our life, in our marriage. Like, I know it's hard to believe, but sometimes I'm not perfect. Just suspend disbelief for a moment. But when she does that, it's not because she's trying to punish me or hurt me. It's because she values our relationship. And I know that as she does that, she does it with love and respect, and we talk through it because we believe that our marriage is worth protecting and preserving at all costs. And I'll tell you what's even harder to believe is that sometimes I complain to Carrie. It's really rare, okay? But even then, I'm not trying to punish or hurt her. It's because we have this mutual commitment to each other, and we are going to protect and, when necessary, repair our relationship at all costs. See, sometimes we have this view of God that we have to pretend with God. We have to pretend that everything is okay all the time. We can't be honest with God. Like he's that boss that if you're honest with, he's going to get all upset and angry and fire you. You can't tell him the bad news, only the good news. That's not who God is. God is not emotionally fragile. God is not insecure. You don't have to protect God from your feelings, from what you're going through. He is well aware of how hard life is. He already knows what you're experiencing. He welcomes you to be honest with him because it's a way that actually honors the relationship. See, God is not interested in religion. A religion means doing for God whatever you think is going to keep him on your good side. Like just please God and make sure that he continues to bless you. That's religion. God is about relationship. And relationship is honest and respectful and loving. And God is so gracious that he actually treats us in the same way that he desires us to treat him. So he's honest with us. He treats us with love and respect and dignity, and we do the same for him. And that is the foundation of a healthy relationship. And so as Moses is dealing with these people, right, he's calling them out for their grumbling, because this is damaging to the relationship that God wants to have with them. See, they're pretending to be upset only with Moses and Aaron. And Moses says, no. God sees right through that. Like, you can pretend, but that's disingenuous. You can pretend you're just grumbling about me and Aaron, but really you're grumbling about God. You are accusing God. You are questioning God's love for you. You're questioning God's goodness. You're questioning God's faithfulness. He says, stop grumbling. Bring your complaints, but don't grumble. Right, this is what he's saying back in verse 8. He said, he heard your grumbling. God heard your grumbling against him. He says this repeatedly. Who are we? Right? Who are we? Like, when we grumble through life, who are we really grumbling against? Who are we really grumbling against? Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. And what's so incredible and again, really surprising here is that God doesn't take them to task for their grumbling. Like, he's warned them earlier, hey, be careful. Like, watch out. Don't let this become a pattern for your lives. But here, right, again, he meets them graciously. He gives them what they need. But this time he does change it. He doesn't just give it to them carte blanche. He says, I'm going to give you some instructions, because he wants to begin to train them to believe, to trust him. So he gives them the food, right? He gives them the manna. They're going to wake up every day, and there's the manna waiting for them. But he says, you don't get to just go and gather as much as you want, right? You don't get to just go and outgather everybody else. See, if you can outgather everybody else, then that's going to tempt you not to trust God. Instead, trust how well you can gather. I can gather more than you. I don't really need to worry about whether God provides more, because I provided for myself. And he says, no, we're not going to do that. So instead, you gather only what you need for you for one day. You and your family, one day, except for the sixth day, leading to the Sabbath. Then you get to gather for 2, but that's the only exception, and it's only for 2 days. If you gather more than what you need, that is going to spoil immediately, right? You're not going to get away with this. In other words, no hoarding. That's the rule. There's no hoarding of manna. God is very anti-hoarding. I don't know if you know this. God is against hoarding. He's not okay with hoarding. So let's clarify this. Let's back up for a second. Let me state the obvious. We are not the Israelites living in the desert with God providing manna for us every day, right? God is not our personal DoorDash where you could just like every day wake up, and I would love a menu if he was going to do that, not manna every day, but like every day get like something new. That would be fantastic, and you never pay for any of it. That's not our reality, correct? The Israelites, this is only their reality while they're in the wilderness. When they get into the promised land, they have to create a society just like our society at one level. You work, you pay for your food, and by the way, you should be wise stewards with your money. Proverbs tells us that we should work hard and then save to provide for future needs. But there is a moral difference between saving and hoarding. They're not the same thing. There is a difference between saving and hoarding. Saving is about wisely providing for future needs. Hoarding is about sacrificing immediate needs of someone else to keep more for myself. You see the difference? Saving is about wisely providing for future needs. Hoarding is about saying, I don't care what you need, I want more for myself. And what's the mantra of the hoarder? A little bit more. Always a little bit more. How much do you need? A little bit more. But they don't have enough, doesn't matter. I need more for me. That is the mantra of the hoarder. See, God is really against hoarding. Hoarding will destroy your soul. Hoarding will destroy you from the inside out, because it tells you to put yourself above everybody else. It tells you that what you want and what you can keep for yourself is what you deserve, and it doesn't matter what anybody else is experiencing in life. And by the way, this is what will destroy the world and has been since the beginning of time. Right, I was thinking about this morning, and I'm not going to do the math on this, but I'll say this in a way that you can understand. I'm pretty confident that you could take about 95% of everything that's wrong in the world, and if we got rid of hoarding, it would change overnight. Like hoarding is the basis of envy, jealousy, stealing, taking from other people, of taking more than what I need so that other people don't get what they need. Like hoarding is behind all of this. It's to say, I don't care what you're going through, I don't care what your needs are, I'm going to take as much as I can and give nothing back. That's hoarding. I have a friend back in Dallas, and he's from Rwanda, and he worked in Africa for many, many years with different communities there. And he had a great statement. He said, live simply so that others may simply live. Like, what would change in the world if everybody said, I'm going to live simply so that others may simply live? Instead of saying, I'm going to collect as much as I can, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. See, God is absolutely for saving. Be wise, right? Save and also give. See, generosity is the answer to hoarding. The way that you prevent your heart from slipping from saving into hoarding is by giving, generosity. And so God, he is telling the Israelites, this is not how we're going to play the game. Like there's no hoarding manna. Whatever you don't eat, that day, it's gone. And what God is teaching them and training them is to trust him for what they need. To say, listen, I'm going to provide for you. You don't have to hoard. You don't have to take more than you need. And later on, that's going to shift. There's going to be saving. There's going to be giving. But for right now, I'm just teaching you, very basic. I will provide for your needs because he knows that there is a whole wilderness out ahead of them, and it's going to take some time. And it only takes the next crisis to forget God's faithfulness. In fact, in the very next chapter, look at one more section, one more account. Verse 1, the whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Sound familiar? Here we go again. So they quarreled with Moses. So here they're upping the ante. They're not just grumbling, now they're arguing. Now they're quarreling with Moses and said, give us water to drink. Moses said, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? But the people were thirsty for water, and they grumbled against Moses. And they said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? And then Moses, he cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me. By the way, one of the signs of immaturity is that when you can't tell your friends from your enemies. See, they were looking back at Egypt going, man, that was pretty great. Those Egyptians, they weren't so bad. But Moses, you're our enemy. You have led us out here to die. This is why immature people pick the wrong crowd. They end up associated with people who actually destroy them, and they don't recognize their friends from their enemies. And the Lord answered Moses, walk on ahead of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. And I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. And so Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? See, that is the question. Is the Lord with us or not? And see, that question is actually what the quarrel is about. That's the question that they're arguing with Moses over. Because they're looking at their circumstances and going, I'm not sure if God's really with us. Like, we're thirsty again. God, are you really with us? I'm not sure if God is really with us. And Moses is arguing with them going, are you kidding me? Like, do you remember where we have come from? Like, let me just refresh your memory. God got you out of Egypt. He split the Red Sea. You come out in the wilderness, and he provides water. He provides quail for me. He provides manna for you every day, including today, by the way. And now you're wondering if God is really with you? Is he really with us? Moses is like, you've got to be kidding me. And this is why he turns to God and says, what do I do with these people? Like, I don't know what to do with them. Like, you've done all of this for us, God, and they still aren't sure if you're really with us. Thank goodness we would never question God like that. Whew, what a relief, right? Oh, wait. How quickly do we move into a place where we wonder whether God is really with us, whether he's forgotten us, whether he's abandoned us? having completely forgotten all that he's done to bring us this far. And we can sit with roofs over our heads and food on our plates, and we can be in some tough spots, believe me, but we so easily forget every good thing, all that he's done for us up to this point, and we go, God, are you really with us? Have you forgotten me? Are you really on my side? And see, understand, this question is the question. This question changes everything in your life. This question is the difference between the life that you are meant for, the life you're created for, a life of compassion and generosity and courage and conviction, and a life that is crippled and shriveled up by fear. Because if God is with you, who can be against you? If God is with you, what do you have to fear? If God is with you, what could possibly rob you or steal from you the future that God has for you? See, this question is the question, is God with you or not? And the answer is, can I just tell you right now? He is. God is with you. He has been with you all along. But the way that you become aware of his presence, it begins with appreciation. See, they didn't remember all the good that he had done. They were ungrateful. See, the people who are most aware of God's presence, they're the grateful people. But if you are ungrateful, you will search and search and search, and you will never find God. If you want to become more aware of God's presence, begin to appreciate what he's already done. I love going backpacking. I love to get into the wilderness. And I think that God reveals himself to me in a unique way when I'm out in nature. And when I want to experience God's presence in that unique way, like I just want to get in the wild. I want to get away from my cell phone and away from the noise and the news and all the chaos of a calendar and just all of it. And just go out into the wild. And I think that God uses that in a way to recalibrate me. Right, to get away and to recalibrate my heart and my mind to see him clearly again and to see life clearly again. And it's so interesting that in scriptures, so often God, this is the pattern in people's lives that he wants to use, is that he takes them into the wilderness and he begins to shape them and prepare them and recalibrate them for the work that he has for them. And you go back into Genesis and you find Abraham, and God tells him to take a walk through the wilderness in a place he's never been before he becomes the father of a nation. You have Jacob, who needed some serious recalibrating of his life and to wrestle with his past before he could embrace the future that God had called him to. Moses, he goes into the wilderness for 40 years and takes care of sheep until God recalibrates his reality in a very vivid way in his encounter with the burning bush before he can lead the people out of Egypt. Centuries later, Jesus himself goes into the wilderness before he launches his ministry and literally saves the world. See, for the Israelites, this was to be 40 years of wandering, 40 years of recalibration, of God preparing them, changing them so that they could become the people he had created them to be. See, they were already his people, but they weren't. They weren't living that way. It took just a few days to get them out of Egypt, but it would take 40 years of recalibration to get Egypt out of them, for them to become the people who he had made them to be. See, it's no wonder that when God wants to prepare us for work that he has for us, to prepare us, to grow us, to recalibrate us, it doesn't happen at the top of the mountain. It doesn't happen in the pinnacle. It happens in the wilderness. It happens in the daily grind. It happens through going to work day in and day out. The thankfulness of life, oftentimes the monotony of dealing with all sorts of headaches and struggles. It's through our marriages and parenting, as great as those can be. There's a struggle to all of life. This is the wilderness, but it's in the wilderness that God prepares us, that God changes us, recalibrates us, and reshapes us. See, some of you find yourselves right now in a wilderness. And it's deep. Maybe some of you are struggling through a particularly challenging part of your wilderness journey. And maybe it's through a broken relationship. Maybe it's in longing for a relationship and not having one. Maybe it's in a breakup, or maybe it's in a breakdown. And maybe it's looking for work Maybe you're looking for employment and you're in this wilderness journey trying to figure out how long God is going to leave you there. Maybe it's in a job that you despise. You don't know why you're doing this job. It's not the job you want to do, but for whatever reason, God has you in that place for this time. Maybe it's an illness that you have to struggle through day in and day out. This is the wilderness that you find yourself in, and it's so easy in that to wonder if God is really present. But I want you to know that God is in that wilderness if you will look for him, if you will look through the coincidences and see him, if you will trust him and lean in, then you will find that he is doing a work in you. He is preparing you. And that when you get to the other side, you will find a new version of you waiting. See, this might sound a little surprising, maybe even uncomfortable, but you need to embrace this reality that God's dreams for you are bigger than your dreams for yourself. He wants greatness for you. He wants to perform miracles through you. He wants to change the world, your sphere of influence, to impact the people in your life through acts of kindness and compassion and courage and grace and generosity. Because those things are not native to this land. He wants his glory to shine through you. Not just in a cloud over the wilderness somewhere, no. You were created to radiate his glory. He wants you to shine. In the rule of threes, there's the essential elements of air, shelter, water, and food. And if you are going to make your way through this wilderness life, if you're going to know and be aware of his presence, then you have to begin to see that he provides all of those, that God is the one who gives them to you as you need them and beyond. That God, he is the very air that you need. In Hebrew, the word for air is the same as breath, is the same as spirit. God is the one who literally breathes life into us. He enlivens our spirits and brings us to life. That he is the shelter that we need in the midst of a storm, that when you hold on to God, I'm telling you that whatever storms come your way, if you will hold on to him, I promise you, he will see you through. That he is the living water that quenches our spiritual thirst for meaning and deep connection. That Jesus himself is the very bread of life who satisfies and fulfills the hunger and the longing of our souls. And if you want to know Jesus' presence in the wilderness, then the first step for you is to look at what he's already done for you. See, Jesus, when he began his ministry, he went into the wilderness, but then later, when he was arrested, when he was tried and he was sentenced, he let them lead him again out into the wilderness. It was outside the walls of Jerusalem, out to a place called Golgotha, where he let them nail him to a tree. And he died and he rose to life for you so that you would never be alone in the wilderness again. And when you see what he's done for you and you accept the life that he wants to give you, when you accept the forgiveness that he has for all of your past, everything that you've carried around, to accept this future that he's created you for, when you see Jesus like that, then he is inviting you to experience real life with him. And he begins this work of preparing you, of changing you, of growing you into the person you've always meant to be. If you have never given your life to Jesus, maybe you find yourself in a wilderness today, and you feel alone, and you feel empty, like you have been wandering for days without water, without food, and you are longing for something that you can't even maybe put your finger on. And you have tried all sorts of things to fill that gap and to fill that emptiness. I'm telling you that Jesus is the one that you're looking for. He is the one who can satisfy and fill you. So I want to give you just some space in just a moment, just to encounter Jesus and to speak to him, to know that he is the one who is there for you, and he wants to change your life. Would you all just pray with me as we close? Just bow your heads and close your eyes just for a moment. Lord, I just want to lift up anyone right now. And if they're honest with themselves, they've just reached this place that they don't know where they are in life. They're wandering in the wilderness. They feel directionless. They don't know how to get where they're going, and they're not even sure where they should be going. They've reached a place where they realize that you're the one that they need. I pray that right now they would know your presence in a unique and a supernatural way. And if that's you, and you're listening to me right now, and you realize that you need Jesus, I want to just lead you in a very simple prayer. You can say to Jesus, I give my life to you. That's all you have to say. You are admitting that you can't live your life without him. That you can't save yourself. You can't forgive your own sin. You can't create your own future, that you need what only Jesus can give. And that he already gave his life for you. And you can give your life to him. Right now, you can pray that. Jesus, I give you my life. Jesus, I give you my life. And if that's you, I want you to know that Jesus hears you and he has come into your life and it will change everything about you. And we would love to be part of that conversation. So I hope you come find us afterwards. Father, we just come before you and just recognize that we're no better than the Israelites. We wander through the wilderness, and at the very next crisis, we question if you really love us, if you're really there, if you've abandoned us. And then you show up, and we rarely give you the credit that you deserve. And then we wander on for a while, and we hit another crisis, and we repeat the same pattern over and over again. But God, we're asking today that you would help us to see more clearly this week the reality of you. We would see through the coincidences, and we would see you. And we would see your love. We would see your compassion. We would see your generosity. And we would know once and for all that you're with us. You will never leave us. You will never forsake us. Lord, help us to hold on to you this week and to follow you. And we pray this in your name. Amen. If you are at a particular place in your life where you're just struggling through the wilderness, I just want to invite you to come up and pray. We have a couple of people with our prayer team who'd love to pray with you. Have a great week, church. Love you.